Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. It is so nice just to say a blanket good afternoon across the U.S. Sometimes we do these at different times. I have to address different time zones, so it's nice to just say good afternoon. So thanks for signing up for this. We're going to talk about foundations of success. And this is going to be taken a little bit from the Adtaxi spin of things when we're going to talk about engaging prospects, nurturing them along, and converting them. And you're probably going to hear me talk a little bit about converting with efficiency. So that's kind of be tie into that as well. Before I get too far into this, though, a little bit of housekeeping. All these sessions are recorded, and we will be sending out an email with the recording on there. We'll do our very best to take some questions at the end. Sometimes we run out of time, but submit your questions in the question box there on the right, little arrow, and we'll do our best to get to them. And if we don't, we will follow up in the email as well for that. So without further ado, going to get into some introduction outside of just myself, and talk about Drew Walkinshaw. He's joining us today. He's our VP out of Southern California, one of our bigger offices down there. And he's been leading the charge in online marketing since the days of dial-up. Yes, a while. And when he's not building digital strategy, he's strategizing on how to put more pucks in the net. So welcome, Drew.
Thanks, Bob. It's more like strategizing how to put a puck in the net these days, but I appreciate the sentiment.
And then a little bit about this voice that's on the line, Bob Batchelor. I'm the Director of Customer Experience here at Adtaxi. I've been immersed in digital since before Facebook launched, so I think what we're trying to say between Drew and myself is we've been around here for a little bit. We're getting old. Oh, I mean seasoned, pardon. Anyway, what I like to do is I live in Colorado, and I used to live in the mountains, and I'm in Denver now, so I don't get as many big powder days, but that's certainly what I long for, and sharing laughs with family is always enjoyable. So just diving right in here, normally I don't talk about ourselves and talking about Adtaxi, but in this case, we're going to take a little bit different approach, and we are going to talk about ourselves because this is like our approach, what we find when we're helping our clients out, when we're kind of moving prospects through a buyer's journey. This is what we found to be successful. So we're talking a little bit about ourselves. We are an innovative company. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, we innovate, and we constantly are innovating, and we've done this," but we truly do it. We don't just rest on our laurels. We don't just rely on Google. We don't rely on Facebook and just those platforms. We're really trying to build things out. So with Google, we've actually won a search pacing tool award. So an award that helps pace your monthly spend throughout that. We've also won awards for INMA, International News Media Association award winner for our best marketing solution. A work life, we actually won a balance award, as well as innovative culture. And one thing that we developed that's really cool, and I'm going to talk about a little bit later, is a proprietary algorithm called Quantum. And this elevates ad performance above what we see with Facebook, above what we see with our display partners. In some of those partnerships, we've been Google and Bing partners for, I don't even know how long, a long time. But not only are we just partners, we're a premier partner for Google and elite partner for Bing. Facebook, we've probably been a partner for just over 2 years, I think. And we were one of their first ones to come into their partnership program. When we initiated it, we were one of 6 small business partners for agency side. And then Snapchat, we did that about a year ago. And the reason I say this is that we're evolving so that you can evolve. And we're trying to grow our business so that we can grow your business and do everything in the right way in that. And one of the right ways that we're finding is what we're going to talk about in the next slide, if it would click. Actually, we're not going to talk about that one. Or, yes, we are. We're going to talk about our growth portfolio, and then we're going to talk about our engage, nurture, and convert, because I've forgotten the order of the slides. So, Drew, you want to take this one?
I think what's key to keep in mind for any advertising campaign is you should always be looking for a true omni-channel digital growth portfolio. And that's what we like to look at when we speak about advertising for our customers, is their advertising portfolio, just like their stock portfolio. How do we shift budgets to best performing areas so that we're not siloed in any one platform or any one stock, but we're only tied to performance? How do we grow your company's revenue by shifting budget? So when running a really strong online marketing campaign, one thing you should always be looking for is budget shifts between and within platforms. That should be an expected part of any strong solution and optimization policy. What we see when we're doing that is that by combining platforms, we can lower your actual cost of acquisition of new customers or purchases, whatever your KPIs are. So here's an example. By combining two platforms, in this case search and social, we are able to lead a reduction in acquisition costs because we can use less expensive platforms to do much of the heavy lifting. So branding and retargeting and social display can lead to more of the less expensive branded search inquiries versus prospecting and search, which you might be competing against people not really advertising the same thing as you, but trying to advertise as a person searching for something similar. So when we combine search and social, what we see is that we've been able to generate what is approximately a 46% decrease in the cost per acquisition, and that's that data is gathered from over 250 plus accounts. And when you look at display, which is the next slide, we've actually seen a 49% decrease in cost per acquisition, and I believe that's because display does a lot of real heavy lifting, and we're actually going to talk about how you can attribute that heavy lifting to display later in this presentation and why it's so important to really look at combining all these platforms together in the right mix in order to lower your cost per acquisition.
Absolutely. And what I love about those two slides, or just the information, is that we're talking about 250 accounts. We're not just talking about, hey, here's one customer that did this and here's another customer that did that. This is an aggregate taking all these accounts together. So it just shows the impact across a big, broad set of accounts and different industries that we find when you combine things, you get a better result.
Absolutely. And combining platforms to see those better results really plays into what we call our strategic approach. And that's a sort of a three-pronged attack, which is first, engage, second, nurture, and three, convert. So as your website becomes more or less your cash register and not sort of the be-all, end-all of your brand's online presence, it's important that you talk to consumers where and how they want to be reached, not where and how you want them to be reached. And that's a really, really important distinction that advertisers need to keep in mind. No longer are people going to go to your website to do a lot of the research about their brand. They're going to go to other websites, and they're going to experience your brand through other people's eyes. And they're also going to see how you present your brand within different platforms. And that's really, really important to keep in mind. It's odds are your website's the last stop in somebody's brand research now, not the first. And I think because of that, that's why an omni-channel solution is really important, that you first engage consumers, which is find them, strategically target new people who have not heard of your brand in the places that they are and the places that they're seeking information, and then nurture them. Maybe you can drive them to your site, or you've been able to engage with them some other platform. You need to then sort of move them along their journey in order to get them a little more personalized approach. And then finally, how do you get them to take that action you want them to take? How do you get them to fill out a lead form? How do you get them to make a purchase on your website? How do you get them to walk onto a lot if you're an auto dealer? That's the conversion piece that ends up being, that most important KPI. But it's those first two steps that lead to it. And so as we walk through our presentation today, I think you'll see how we attack that and how you should be thinking about that as well.
Nice.
So the first step is to engage, and that means to find, develop, and influence audiences that have that intent to purchase or take whatever other action you're looking for them to take. And it's at this early stage, it's really about engaging the right audience. Sort of one-to-one marketing or personalized marketing isn't really existent in the engaged stage. This is like the true prospecting stage of advertising, is finding new audiences, finding audiences that look like your existing audiences, and getting them to start considering your brand. So let's explore a little bit how we uncover these groups.
Absolutely. So this is a slide I love. It's taken from Google. We took it from them, gave them full attribution on that. But this is how a lot of people, I think about their customers. Well, we lean male, we like this age group, and we know they live in this vicinity and they have this kind of income. But there's so much more data out there to know at a more granular level about what your prospect is, who your client is. So now we can start to dig in. We want people that are young achievers. This person rents. They're early tech adopters. They read tons of reviews. They're into vintage scooters. They happen to be libertarian. They actually prefer CTV and Instagram. So now once we start knowing this much more about our clients, as Drew was talking about, now we're engaging them on levels that are of interest to them. And we can take that and we get this data and we find out who these people are, one, through your data. And you're going to say, Bob, well, how boring is that? I already have these people. I already know who they are. Of course. But we can start segmenting them. Say, who's your best long-term customer? Who's the best person that buys just, every 3 months? And whatever these segments are, we can start to take these segments and then start to build lookalike audiences. So we want to take your highest lifetime value customers and we want to model people that look like them. And when we start doing that, the data is, or the information is so much more rich and so much more powerful to be able to engage on that level when we know something about them and how to reach those people. Because if you've already done it once, now we want to do it with people that look like these customers. Then outside of first party data, your data, let's talk about third party data. We talk about this a lot, but I always am like, people say third party data, you access third party data. But at one point I was like, well, where in the world does this come from? Well, it comes from a lot of different sources, and some of the richest sources are search, social, and programmatic. Search is an easy one because people are just typing exactly what they want. And now with search being more kind of natural search, getting more information. But also it goes to YouTube. What are they watching on there? What are they playing on music for Google Play? Google Maps. Same goes with Bing, Bing Maps. But you get more information here from that side of the platform. Now other third-party data that we can garner from social is people, are they sharing information? Who are their friends? What's that information? What stories are they reading on Instagram? Who are they snapping with? We've got all that information. We can start to build things on what are their interests, what's their behavior on that. Then we get into programmatic and RTB, and where are they garnering their third-party information? What are people watching? We mentioned CTV on the last gentleman's profile, that they like that. Well, what are they watching on that? What are they listening to on Spotify? What are they reading? Now we can get more information, so we really have this rich, robust set of data to start targeting them from them. And I kind of threw away demographics. Those to me are kind of giveaways. But then there's shopping and browsing habits. We talked about that with garnering that third-party information. But what's even more powerful, or part of powerful, not more, is Google has what's called in-market audiences. So it's not just that they have an interest in buying a new or in cars, they're actually in the market this month for it. Not that they have an interest in home decorating, but they're looking at it right now. So now we talk about when they're in the market for this. And we can also target on interest and geography. A lot of people, what we find is they don't test other areas. We work with Flagstaff Travel and Tourism Convention Bureau, pardon me. They generally know they target southern Arizona, California, and a few others, but we broadened that reach and we went out to different areas. Also, what's really cool is going for live events or areas that, there's a festival in a certain area and you want to geofence because that festival is drawing the crowd that you want to go to or that you want to come to your store. All kinds of powerful ways just to target in the geography sector as well. Then it's not necessarily new, but it sure is cool, and it's dynamic targeting. So with all that behaviors, the demographics, shopping, interest, let's talk about how we get it when something's going on in the world or going on in the area and target off of that. One of the things that we find extremely powerful is weather. And this can work for so many businesses like tire shops. If it snows, start pumping up ads. And you can base it on how much rain did we get? How much snow did we get? Is it over 100 degrees? So travel companies, other businesses that are temperature or weather contingent, very powerful way to say, hey, it's nice and cool in the mountains. It's hotter than Hades down in Texas. You guys should be coming up here. Other things for like physicians and doctors, air, pollen, count. You can do live games, even stock fluctuations, great for financing or financial planners. So market just crashed, but we can protect you from that. So really think about like what are some events that could happen that I want to target off of. And this is also a way to be efficient with your budget. You're only serving ads for a certain amount of time after this certain event happens. So super cool. I love this. Kind of gets me jazzed. Then we're going to end each section. So we're going to engage with a little bit of a story. We're going to pull one out. So this is a ski shop. They had 300,000 customers. Well, they wanted to go after more rental segment. So out of that 300,000, they pulled out 100,000 that were in their rental category. From there, just like I talked about before, they took that 100,000, they put it into Facebook to build a lookalike audience. They matched 78%, so 78,000 match rate. But then out of building a lookalike targeting pool, they had a prospecting audience of 800,000 people. So huge amount of people that look like that. We're not doing a spray and pray. We're not doing a shotgun, hoping that something happens. Now we've got 800,000 people that kind of look like these people probably have a good likelihood of purchase. Out of that, we got a 3-to-1 ROI on online reservations. The 6-to-1 is inferred. Those are children's rentals. We have to infer it because they can't book online because of their size of their skis, the size of their foot, all that. They want people to come in. But we worked with their marketing director and said, how much did they go up? Okay, what can we attribute to that? What was your last year's amount? So 3-to-1 on absolute online reservations, return on investment, 6-to-1 with that inferred and working with their marketing director. So incredible story on using and leveraging first-party data. And then I'll do a little shameless plug because some of this is going to change. Upcoming in January 1st comes the California Privacy Act. And we're going to be doing a webinar on the 11th of December to talk about that. So some of that could change a little bit. We're prepping for it. We want to help you. So there's my nice shameless plug for an upcoming webinar. And now back to Drew.
I think now that you've seen how you can engage new prospects, what do you do once you've finally got somebody interested? You have to nurture them through their journey to finally convert on your site or in your store. And this is really the one-to-one piece now. This is really where you have to talk to them in the way they want to be talked to. So now that we've engaged that audience and they've maybe even visited your website, what can we do to influence their purchase behavior? There was one study from Episerver that found that 92% of consumers' initial visits to a site do not result in a sale. And I think because of that, because 92% of those visits aren't doing anything, this is why we have to focus so heavily on the nurturing phase. This is probably the most intense piece of your marketing and also the toughest to really get right.
Yes, I can echo that right now. I would say websites probably hate me. I just was informed that I need a new home stereo, and wasn't happy about that. And I've been going to so many sites and hitting them and not purchasing on that first one. So I am definitely a person that needs to be nurtured along on that. So I'm not going to go into this slide intensely or deep, but it's just saying that every path to purchase is a little different. No two consumers are the same. Certainly a lot of people are different out there. So not everybody's just going to say this go through X, Y, and Z. In this case, Jane was looking for some furniture. She had search. She was impacted by pre-roll, Facebook carousel ads, connected TV, went direct to websites, got hit with Facebook retargeting. So not discounting that, but it's just there's all kinds of different paths. So how do we nurture people along knowing that they're all different? One thing we can do is start to understand what devices they're using. Not just platforms, but are they on their mobile? Are they on a tablet? Are they on their desktop? What browser they're using is cool too, because you can start to see Bing uses a lot more desktop. But there's also things like, not to get too technical, there's deterministic. We know that they logged into Facebook, so we know who this user is. Probabilistic, well, they're on this Wi-Fi, we're going to guess on that, and we're going to take some good educated guess. But understanding what devices they're on and even how they use a device, maybe they were on the mobile first, they came home and wanted to have a bigger screen for an experience and got on the desktop, that's important too. And it's important on your bidding and your strategies on how you go through this, and making sure you're having a good cohesive experience through cross-device behavior. Then we want to model the attribution. That's a little bit different. We did a whole webinar on that, but understand which platforms they had hit on that as well. And then the big thing is you go back, you learn all this, and then you say, hey, I'm going to refine this campaign. We're going to put a little bit more here, a little less there, and change that up a little bit. Now, so we know the devices they're on. When they came to your site, and like me, I told you about the stereo example, came to the site, I might have visited a few pages, but I left. So when consumers visit your site, this is a Flagstaff example for that tourism bureau I was talking about. They visited hiking. Now they left. We're going to retarget. This happens to be there on Entrepreneur Magazine, and we're going to retarget with relevant ads. So now we're nurturing this based on where they are in our site. And we talk about retargeting a lot, especially when we talk about nurturing your prospects through, is because it works. Those ads that chase you around, they work. You know, website visitors who are retargeted with display ads are 70% more likely to convert. 91% of marketers who use retargeting found it to perform the same or better than search, email, or display ads. Pardon, I'm reading some of this. So 3 of 5 online viewers notice and consider ads showing products they viewed from another page. Yep, those creepy little ads that are chasing you around, they work. But what I also like is it's not just display ads. You can retarget on connected TV. You can retarget on Facebook, all kinds of different platforms that you can do that on. So it looks a little bit more native in that approach. Also, we want to make sure that our creative is absolutely stunning. Video, everybody's talking about it. It's not news anymore, but you know, making sure that first image that pops up with video, that kind of hero image, is very powerful. Pre-roll is a great way to do this. YouTube ads, connected TV, the CTV, pardon me, I used an acronym there. If you're not familiar with it, it's just connected TV. And Facebook carousel, what I love about that one, that thumb stopping image, is you start to tell a story. You can add as many thumbs as you want. I can't remember exactly the number if it caps out. Drew, do you remember on that one? But it's practically limitless. Might be 16.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, 16 to 32. I should know my stat when I get on this. But anyway, you're going to you won't put that many. I can almost guarantee it. But you can also put video in here, which is cool. So they take a little thumb to the left and scroll it to the right, and there's a video popping up. And you can tell the story. I like lodging is a great one. I want to show the room. I want to show the pool. I want to show the exercise facility. I want to show the dining. I want to show people having fun. Great way to tell a story within that. So definitely make sure you're nurturing with some incredible creative and good images. Now we want to retarget on a personal level. We talked about the hiking with Flagstaff. Now we want to talk about if they came to my homepage, I'm going to deliver this ad. If they came to a category page, I can now retarget with an ad that says, hey, let's incent you to come back here with 25% off. So now I'm throwing something out there. And how many times have you gotten to the cart page, added the item, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, my kid needs me right now. I got to run. Well, you abandoned at the cart page. We know that. You can see that. Now you can retarget with messages say, forgot something? Anything we can help you out with? And thank you page. They purchased it. Now it's a time to re-engage someone and say, these are some great products for people that kind of like what Amazon does. For people that bought this product, this is a great product. So it's a good way to re-engage that person that's already had a good experience with you. So that's kind of retargeting and dynamic retargeting. Well, to talk more about dynamic, this person viewed an ad, happened to be a computer. I should have used a stereo example because I already used one. But in this case, they looked at this. They looked at a Lenovo computer. They see that the system can go back and match inventory and bring back an ad with that inventory. We found this to be incredibly powerful for auto dealers, apparel. You know, you match those shoes. You want to go back and have an ad that serves hyper relevant. That's just going to drive your conversion rate. And I talked about efficiently. This absolutely is going to increase that conversion rate and allow you to spend your money more wisely and increase your ROAS. So as I mentioned, we're going to end these sections with a little bit of a story. talking about dynamic ads for a dealership, car dealership. What's really cool, what I love about this one is that, and all of them, these inventories are current. So they went out and saw whatever, the VW. It sold yesterday. It's not going to show as an ad. So the inventory that you're retargeting is current. So in this case, this dealer was using retargeting using the social platform. I mentioned you can do this on different platforms. They were using Facebook. And when they were doing this, they had a reduction in their cost per VDP. Again, I'm using an acronym. That one says vehicle description page. It's what we work with dealers to say that's really the biggest tell of when someone's super interested in a car. And 85% reduction in the cost per VDP view. And a 400% increase in views. So we're saving money and we're getting better results through personalization, through retargeting. So great little story on the aspect of nurturing through dynamic inventory and nurturing the buyer along on that side. Drew,
that dynamic piece can often be really important in terms of building up that personalized journey during that nurturing phase, and we find a lot that it leads to that third phase, which is to convert individuals. So the key piece of doing all these first two steps is to make sure at the end of the day that you have the best chance of getting the sale or getting whatever that conversion you're looking for. So to convert people, all we're saying is you need to increase conversions with strategically optimized campaigns. And this is the real key part, is that optimization. So now that we've already engaged people and they've come to your site and we've nurtured them at various touch points throughout their journey and delivered those personalized messages along the way, how do we finally influence their purchase decisions, or at least sort of what are the actions that we can determine are telltale signs of a pre-purchase behavior? I think it's also really important to remember that it's not just about driving that conversion, but doing it cost efficiently. What's the point of driving a conversion if that conversion costs more than the product you're selling, right? So we have to be very, very strategic at this stage.
Absolutely. So happy to hear efficiently again. So one thing before we start converting efficiently, though, is just let's make sure we set up goals. We see a lot of times when working with clients that, and taking over an account, they don't have goals set up. They are not sure what the goals should be. So GA is certainly your friend. We love it. Other people love it. We also can say it's not always the single source of truth, but it certainly is a good one. And we'll talk about we'll poke a couple holes in it in a little bit, but it's a great way to place to start for setting up goals. So every website is different. What I mentioned about with auto dealers is VDP views. It's one that we've worked with them and agreed that that's one of their biggest KPIs, or a measurable action on a site that we can say this is the closest thing we have to purchase or to a purchase, because people go to the dealership. But that was the KPI we worked on. We've worked with other things like form fills and email requests, getting on their email list. So if you're struggling saying, well, God, I don't really know what my KPI should be, an easy question to ask is, I want people to come to my site and do what? That's going to drive to that and help you out in setting up your goals. As I talked about, these goals can be different for every business. So in the case of completed transactions, that's pretty common sense. I'm an e-commerce site, whatever. I want to sell stuff. Product detail page, I mentioned that with dealers. Video views is another popular one we use a lot. Email signups, offer downloads, and I put a screenshot on the left for how Google sets it up. So when you go in there and goal setup, you can see all the different things that you can do in there. And you set that up, you click that button, and then you put in the URL of where that landing page is, or where they're ending up. So it's pretty easy setup. It's not super complicated, but something that we highly recommend before we start talking about converting with efficiency. When we start talking about converting with efficiency, though, a lot of people talk about we optimize. I hear it all the time, kind of like innovate. I'm going to pick on this word. We optimize. We do a lot of optimizations, and we are king at optimizations. And a lot of people talk about, well, we do keywords, we do ad extensions, we'll A/B test for you, and obviously we're going to test your message. But there's so much more to optimizations. I like to kind of say it's not this black box, or we want to take it and not put it in a black black box like a lot of people seem to want to. There's all these different ones: ad format, day parting, browser, fold adjustments, audience refinement. All these things are different ways that we optimize and look at this to say there's a lot of levers we want to pull, and we're going to test them all, and we're going to figure this out. So when people just say we optimize, make sure you're doing everything you can to your campaign to be successful, because it is complex, it's deep, it's wide. So just want to put that out there. So make sure that you're looking at all those things to drive efficiency and be better with your budget. Talking about, I'm just going to kind of pick on a couple optimizations that I really love, is we talk about bid optimization. So we can start valuing a customer when they, or a prospect, when they come into your site. If they came into your homepage and left, probably not the best one, but we're still going to go after and retarget them. That's why we have a bid optimization of 100%. They get deeper in your site. This happens to be e-commerce example, category page, cart page, but this can be anything. They get into your site, category page. We want to bid higher. They're deeper in your site. They're interested. They got to your cart page. Their kid came up and interrupted, whatever it might have been. We want to bid higher. They got all the way there. So we're going to value that visit and make sure that we're going to bid accordingly to that. The other part of that, not just where they are in your site, but let's talk about when were they at your site. Were they there 7 days ago, 14 days ago, 20 days ago? Well, we also want to bid based on how recent they were at your site and weigh that impression. So the green line there is what a lot of companies do and say, we're just going to bid $10. Don't care when they were here, all that. Just going to bid $10. And this one really drives to efficiency. We're going to bid a lot lower if it's been a long time and bid higher based on that propensity. So that recency along with frequency. Have we served 5 ads? Have we only served 1 ad? Did we serve 7? Did we serve 14? You also start to find sweet spots that, you know what, for this business, whatever it might be, X widgets, we're finding actually all the way on the 10th one is when people start to take action. And then on other businesses, we might find, you know what, after the 3rd, it's a dead duck. And so you start to bid on that way. You start to be more efficient with your budget. So when you start to bid on this, make sure you're doing this to be more efficient with that. Then we get into finding the minutia in the details, the minute details. I can't read or speak at this moment. But I believe Drew is going to walk us through some of the finer aspects of these minute details.
Right. The biggest key to optimization is recognizing how the different platforms in your advertising portfolio all work and all work together. And a key piece of this is what we call view-through conversions, and that is that we see a lot of ads in our day. We don't click on all of them. In fact, very few people click on ads, period. But yet we still register that information, and over time we tend to take action from it. I attribute it just like a billboard driving down a freeway. You don't like see a billboard on the freeway, pull over your car underneath it and jump up and try and tap that billboard, or even whip out your phone and call the number on. You don't do it, but you go, oh, that's the lawyer I'm going to call if I get in an accident, or oh wow, that concert's coming, I want to go see that. And then you think about it later, and then you take an action. And that's a very important piece to look at, is that view through piece. So when you're building out attribution models, which is really just the process of identifying the various touch points along your buyer's journey that leads them to that conversion phase, it's important that you don't just look at click metrics, but also view through metrics. And I'll discuss that a little further and show you some reasons as to why that is so important. So
sorry,
I touched on the very few people.
A little happy on the clicking.
Yeah.
My computer.
Kind of giving away the payoff.
Sorry. There we go.
Good. Next slide, please. There you go. We touched on the fact that very few people actually click ads, but would it be shocking to anybody to know that the average person is served 1.7 thousand banners per month, but that only 8% of the users who see those banners actually account for 85% of the clicks? I think that's one of the major reasons that you need to also take into account the number of people who see your ad and take action. And any company running any form of online advertising should be able to track that view through in almost any scenario where there's a KPI on your site that can be tracked. And we look at this very, very frequently, to the point where we've learned that if we optimize to view through conversion, overall site conversions go up. And when we optimize to click conversion, they don't. You know, I'm an old hockey player. We touched on it earlier, but I don't think very many people would argue with me. And if you want to, we can take it up after this call, that Wayne Gretzky's probably the greatest hockey player of all time. I shouldn't even say probably, he is. That's why he's called the Great One. Well, the Great One had 2,857 career points, but only 894 of those were actually goals where he tapped the puck directly into the net. But I don't think there's anybody who would actually argue that his 1,963 assists were not as equally valuable to his team or made him any less important. Those assists still got the puck to the front of the net and helped them get in. So the ability to bring the play to the goal line is every bit as important as getting the puck across it. Yet for some reason, many marketers often look only at who put the puck in the net and not who actually made the play and did all the heavy lifting. And in sports, that can often mean overpaying for a player who can't perform on their own. But in marketing, if you only look at clicks, and especially the last click, it can mean overspending on higher cost platforms and missing out on opportunities altogether, because you're not looking at the total audience journey and the total impact of your advertising on that audience. So, you know, every time I think about view through, I think back to Gretzky and how the assists are really what made his point total what it was.
I think I'm going to steal that, bring that ball to the goal line. I like that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. You know, and to kind of drive that point home, here's some actual results from a campaign we were running, where only 80 of 15,000 conversions we tracked came post-click. So if we only optimized to those 80 conversions, would we really be analyzing that journey and making our bidding most efficient? Absolutely not, because almost 15,000 other people saw the ad and converted, but didn't click it. And so had we ignored their journey, there is no way we would have been as cost efficient or as drawn as many conversions. And so that's why view through is exceptionally important. And I think in the next slide, I can talk to it a little further as to how we got to this point where too many people were just looking at last click.
Absolutely. This is where I'm going to take my finger out and I'm going to poke a hole in GA. So when I teed it up earlier that, you know, GA is really good. And when I say GA, Google Analytics, sorry, I sometimes speak in acronym. So this is one of those holes that GA isn't going to pick up this view through that Drew's talking about. So just a critical point on that. Drew, you got it?
GA can only pick up, I was going to say, GA can only pick up actions that happen after a click. So while Google's making efforts to show the assist now, it still can only do it from something that clicks through the site. That is the one downfall of Google Analytics. And that's why you really need to rely on not just GA, but platform-based reporting, because all the platforms will give you both the click and the view analytics. And that's really, really key.
Right.
Just to kind of understand this further and to poke fun at Bob, how you feeling today, Bob? Bit of a headache?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bob's night last night started off like any other night for Bob, where, you know, there was a happy hour after work and he had a couple cocktails. I think he had the spicy margarita there at the top. It looked pretty delicious. You know, and after that, he went to a wine tasting event that he and his wife had decided to attend, and he had a cup of wine. Then he had a second glass of wine. And then afterwards, one of his buddies texted him. He's like, dude, we're all meeting at this awesome speakeasy in downtown Denver. Come meet us. And he had a great glass of scotch. By that point, it's about 11:30, and Bob went home and decided, you know, kick back, maybe catch up on some Sports Center, have another glass of scotch, and smoke a cigar. That took him to about midnight, where, man, was Bob kind of hungry because he had forgotten to eat. So he made himself probably the greatest Philly cheesesteak he had ever made and ate it. Well, this morning, Bob woke up, and we were going to try to do this webinar earlier, but he said, man, do I ever have a headache? I think I'm pretty hungover. And so I asked Bob, well, tell me about your night. And he just walked me through that journey. And I turned to him and said, well, that's everything we're talking about today. Was it the spicy margarita that gave you the hangover? Was it the first glass of wine, the second one, or one of the two glasses of scotch? Or, maybe your stomach's a little upset from that Philly cheesesteak you made? Or was it all of it together? And that's how you got to look at it. The hangover was, for Bob this morning, was not caused by any one cocktail that he had yesterday, but it was the combined effect of all of it. You couldn't just say the last thing he touched or the last thing he ate is what's now making him feel sick. So it's really important to keep in mind. And we touched on this before, but really Google's the culprit behind why people look too heavily at last click. And that's because when they initially built Google Analytics, it was to justify the performance of their platforms. And their major platform, of course, is AdWords. And AdWords was, at that point, 100% dependent on people clicking it. So, you pay on a cost per click basis. So if Google wanted to justify why they were charging you for those clicks, they needed to show what those clicks were doing. But now even Google's recognized that perhaps they made a mistake. I was recently at a Google seminar, and they chose 10 volunteers out of the audience. And they said, we have a whole basket full of Google prizes that we're going to hand out if you guys can complete this task. So they lined the 10 people up. They gave 9 of them spoons, and they gave a ball to the first person. They said, what I want you to do is put this ball on your spoon, stand on one foot, transfer the spoon with the ball on it to your other hand, and then transfer the ball to the next person's spoon, who has to repeat that task all the way down the line until the final person catches it. So people started trying it. They were dropping the ball. It was bouncing off the stage. Everybody in the audience was having a pretty good laugh. One guy almost fell over standing on one leg. Seems like that could have been a workers' comp case had it gone wrong.
Could have been.
But at the end, after about legitimately 10 minutes, they finally got the ball down to the last spoon. And all that guy had to do was flip that ball to the final guy who had to hold his hands open and catch the ball. So, of course, that was an easy catch. The guy caught it. The Google guy said, that's awesome. Great work, everybody. And he picked up the basket of prizes, and he handed it to the last guy. Now, does that seem fair when everybody else had to stand on one leg, transfer that spoon from one hand to another with the ball on it and not drop it? Of course not. But that was Google's way of saying, hey, you can't just look at the last click. You have to look at everything, every single step that went into getting that ball into that guy's hand. And so when we stress the importance of view through and analyzing the entire journey, that's why. Because in advertising, it's the impact of all your ads that gets somebody to convert. And you have to map that out if you want to be the most cost efficient as possible and drive the most conversions that you can.
Good analogies. Love it. Glad I wasn't standing on one foot last night while I was doing all this other stuff.
Like a good night, Bob.
This slide, Drew talked about conversions and looking upstream, the assisted conversions, knowing attribution. All I want to paint the picture here is on the left-hand side of your GA, go under conversions. There is a tool down there to assisted conversions, so you can start to see these metrics. In this one, you see 377,000 in sales for assisted. Last click was 826,000. So just note that, hey, it's there. It's on the left-hand side. Some things when you start digging into it in this secondary dimensions, what they call, it pointed to social, because this would be one where if you didn't look upstream or stand on one leg further up and help out with this, you would have missed that social, in this case, drove $33,000 in sales. And if you only looked at last click, you'd say, oh, it's just 24,000. So you might take budget and put it somewhere else and not even, and miss the fact that social is actually one of your highest referring or secondary dimensions on the attribution side. So you'd miss that. And then I didn't put it in a red square, but this 241,000 on the paid search, that's one of the biggest numbers. And why Google says, hey, we're the most important thing, and why a lot of people we see optimize right there. Make sure you look upstream. I always use that term, but for your whole full funnel attribution, what's really driving it? What is that part of when we talk about engage and nurture, those things that help out when we start getting all the way down to conversion. This is just a different view, and if you're in there, the only thing to note on this one, I'd like to just point out, the higher this number is, the higher this platform helps out in those further upstream in attribution and solidifying it down or flowing through to the last click. So this is a big assisted conversion up here. The higher the number, the more it provides the assist, which Drew pointed out is what Gretzky's thrived at. Now, we are going to dive into one platform that we just kind of poked fun at a little bit, but it's search. It's still insanely powerful. You saw the $241,000 on that one example. It really does round out the program when you do all that on upper funnel work of engaging the right person, nurturing them along, doing that on different platforms. Search is one of the last things they do. So let's make sure we're going to get it right. So some of the things we do is long tail keywords. So where to snorkel at night in Key West, Florida, several things in there that help out with that. So at night, you start bidding differently on that. Their activities snorkeling, we're going to do it in Key West. We're not in Isla Morada. We're not in different parts of the Keys. We're actually in Key West. And so that's long tail keywords. Also branded search. We do a lot with travel businesses, apartments, things where it's super competitive. You're going against Zillow and different businesses that have lots of money to go out there. So branded search for some of our clients is extremely important. If you've got a name and you're going against big numbers or big people out there, make sure you own your name, because all that upper funnel work, the engage and nurture part of that thing, part of that component, when you're doing that, make sure when they are there to type in your name, you're there. Text ad composition, we talked about that a little bit with optimizations. It is critical to make sure you're testing that and doing A/B testing with that. Ad extensions, these can help with putting out your hours, any kind of specials you have. And then two that are a little bit different, but landing page and mobile site optimization, it's critical for Google relevancy score. So with landing pages, Google says, okay, I see your ad because you typed it into my system, but where are you sending this traffic? Because that's off my system, but I still want to make sure that you're sending this person to a great experience. That's how much Google cares about having a great, all the way through good experience. So they're saying, oh, you're sending it to that landing page. That landing page actually correlates to the ad, and they score it. And it helps out with your SEO and how you're going to rank out there. Mobile site optimization has become, kind of table stakes. You got to have a good site that loads fast. Google's actually going to start, I can't remember the exact date, but they're going to start looking at the load time of your site. Going back to that long tail, though, I just came my friend the other day, guy sitting next to, he's on the search team, and he's working with Hyundai. And they are releasing a new car, the Kona, their make, and they're doing a Marvel Comics edition for the Iron Man series. So, all the superheroes, Marvel's Iron Man. And it's red and it's silver and it's super cool. But it's interesting because Kona is in California. I mean, in Hawaii, pardon me. I don't even know my states. And they have an Iron Man, the running race there, the triathlete race. So here you've got keywords that are Kona, Iron Man for the car, and Kona Iron Man for a race. So you got to start looking at negative keywords to say, no, I don't want that traffic. Yes, I want that traffic. Things that are going to be more efficient with your budget on that. So I thought it was cool. Look, the car looked cool, and the fact that we have to use negative keywords on such a correlating search is pretty fascinating. Geo, kind of touched on that before, and I call this beyond, so I'm going to skip over geo. But beyond, a couple things. We talked about retargeting. I talked about the search pacing tool earlier when we talked about ourselves, and that is just allows us to budget appropriately throughout the month so we don't spend all your budget through there. Error checking scripts. Sometimes if your web developer is out there changing things, you got to make sure that it's also not going to impact your UTMs, your tracking mechanisms, other aspects of your site. They moved a page, they changed the URL. So we actually have scripts. These are automated things that check for problems that can verify, hey, that page is working, this is all working. Then it kind of bleeds over into pixel firing. So we make sure that when that page hits, we see that. And so we drop in code to see different actions happening, making sure those pixels are firing appropriately. And then conversion tracking, we talked about that, and setting that up appropriately, setting up your KPIs, and that we're measuring against what your goals are. So those are kind of a, I wouldn't say secret sauce, but they certainly help them out. Maybe I'll call them awesome sauce. So make sure you're doing all those things. When we talked about optimizations before, this is specifically for search and some of the best practices that we really think make the difference. Then I teed up Quantum's or Adtaxi's quantum algorithm. I'm not going to go too long into this. I think we're going into our time. But quantum, what it does is we wrote an algorithm that says we want to look at the campaign performance. Let's say your business and we're running 10 different campaign lines. We're going to recommend budget based on what your objective is and look at across all the campaigns and say, who's coming in here on these campaigns? What's their conversion rate? What's the best way to optimize this? And we also look at the visitors that are coming in there. So when we say we want more of these people, we don't want more of those people. When we talked about building lookalikes, we can start to see that ad group is working better than that ad group. And we're going to move budget around accordingly. In fact, we did it and we looked at this and we said, you know what, now it's time to study. Are we having an impact? Are we accelerating performance above what anything else is doing, Facebook or display? So we took this, and instead of 250 campaigns, we looked at 9,000 campaigns. We looked at some of our popular platforms, pre-roll video, display, native, and social for platforms. And in all cases, we beat the normal platform performance. When we layered quantum optimization in there, we're beating in pre-roll video 55%. Social's our lowest at 15%. How would you like to save or drive more efficiency at 15%, much less 37 or 38%? So touting a little bit about ourselves. Two verticals that are very popular for us is auto and e-commerce. In those cases, we helped improve performance by 33% for auto, 41% for e-commerce. So enough about us, just a little tease on there. And then some takeaways here. And Drew, feel free to chime in. But we talked about the start of this. Drew talked about multiple platforms. Make sure you combine platforms. Use an omni-channel approach. It's insanely powerful. Then we start to get into our approach. We talked about engaging audiences, using your first-party data to create lookalike audiences. Also knowing that the third-party data that's out there and how that gets sourced is insanely powerful to reach those your audience more effectively. Not just reach your audience, but know your audience. And then retargeting to nurture. Move those people along. See where they are in your site. Put ads that are going to resonate. I like to say hyper local, hyper relevant. Something that says that hits me at home. And then convert. And I think our theme for today is with efficiency. We talked about bid optimizations, recency bidding, frequency bidding, all those other optimizations in there to drive efficiency. Dynamic retargeting, going back to nurturing, also drives efficiency. So it's not just converting, it's converting with efficiency. Let's be more effective with your dollars, or let yourself be more effective with your dollars. So, Drew, anything to add on that part?
Not to that part. I think you summarized it very succinctly. Just if anybody ever has any questions, you want to follow up on any of this, you have interest in learning more about the various pieces that we laid out, or even wants to analyze your current strategy and attribution model, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is right here, and I can have somebody help you with that. Looks like we do have a few questions though, Bob. Do we have time to answer them?
Yeah, sure.
We do.
That'd be great.
Cool. What's the first one? How often should I assess my strategy and optimizations? That's a great question. Something we see too frequently is people freaking out in the first few days of a campaign. If you start looking at daily performance versus overall performance, you're discounting your consumer's journey and how they got there. I would say first few weeks of a campaign, really let the AI do its job. Each platform has its own, plus we're applying, if you're working with us or somebody like us, we're applying an algorithm to that as well. I've seen campaigns sit in Facebook learning phase for 3 or 4 weeks. It totally depends on how many conversions and how much you're spending, how quickly the machine is going to learn what it should do. And so to panic early and start saying, well, on Tuesday I didn't get enough sales, and then change your strategy, you will never allow the learning to take place. Overall, I'd say, maybe the first 2 weeks you do very little other than, things you can see are glaringly wrong early on. Then as sort of your first month goes by, you sort of start dropping out the things that aren't working or shifting budget to where you've seen quick and good performance. Within 60 days, you're probably humming fairly well. You probably shifted a lot of budget. You're probably starting to learn at what times you should be heavier in certain platforms versus others. And then by 90 days, I would hope that you're really seeing sort of the full efficiency, and are then probably layering in budget to build even more optimization, or even layering in additional platforms to continue to nurture and engage those consumers. What's the second question? What part of the process do you see companies overlook the most? I know we touched on this a lot. but still too many people are just looking at Google Analytics and last click. And if you do that, you are going to overpay for your conversions. We have an advertiser that we talked to and in the end decided not to work with because they were using 3 display vendors, and we're only going to look at Google Analytics for performance. And I'm like, well, display doesn't convert through click. So you're going to overspend. And the fact that you have to have 3 display vendors tells me you're already overspending to get the performance you should be able to get by one if you look at the complete journey. But because they're so beholden to Google Analytics and last click, they're going to spend probably 3 or 4 times what they should be in that one platform. We had a similar vendor who also said they'd only look at last click, and we convinced them to actually take a 60-day experiment and allow us to build out view through. And when we showed them the results, they were blown away. They're like, wait a second, we're getting 10 times the conversions from display we thought we could. And we were able to tie that back to the first time somebody saw an ad. So they realized that the last time somebody saw an ad wasn't the only time they did, and wasn't the only impact that ad had. And that's really important. So I know I continue to harp on it, but definitely the most overlooked part is view through. How does all this apply if I'm not an e-commerce client? Great question. You have a website because you want somebody to take a specific action about your business, whether that's to learn where you are, fill out a form to contact you, or to sign up for something, to call you. There's a reason your website is what it is and why you have it. And so all these strategies can tie to those reasons. Just because a purchase is the easiest thing to track online, because there's usually a unique identifier supplied, it doesn't mean it's the only thing that can be tracked. So you need to build out your KPIs, and Bob touched earlier on the Google Analytics goals, but any campaign should probably also use pixels to track those actions that you want taken, so that you can tie that back to your advertising. But all these strategies really can work across multiple end goals, including even like for automobile dealers, like walking onto the lot. We have one other. What's the best way to tap into younger demographics? And does this work across channels since they are primarily on social media? While younger demos are definitely heavier social media users, it's not the only thing they're on. I have teenagers, and they spend a lot of time on YouTube. I wouldn't call YouTube necessarily social media. It's probably more of a search engine. So realistically, the beauty of an omni-channel approach in reaching any demographic is that the audience defines the journey and where you should put your money. So if those younger audiences are actually heavier in social, you'll start seeing that as you optimize, and your budget will shift to those platforms where it's most important. But it doesn't discount the other platforms where maybe you won't need as much budget, but they're still doing some of the lifting. So it could be that, you know, your target is an 18-year-old college student who spends a lot of time in Snapchat and some in Instagram, but also has a fantasy football team and is spending a ton of time, you know, managing his team. And so you're going to want to reach him probably in mobile in-app advertising at that same time when he's engaged online. So you will find that journey for those individuals, and the data that you use to find that, and the data that can be also added to a campaign to identify those individuals, will sort of dictate eventually where to put that budget. So I wouldn't be worried just that they're all on social media, because they're not. That's all the questions we have today, Bob.
Wow, those are great questions. Good answers.
Yeah, really good.
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic. Thanks for the engagement. Thanks for the questions, everyone. And as I mentioned, we're going to be sending out a recording of this webinar. If you missed anything, we'll catch part of it again. Thank you, Drew, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. And with that, we'll wrap it up, and appreciate everyone's time. You guys have a great day. Thank you.